Let's take off these two caps for the wipers, and we're gonna have to remove the wiper arms and then the cowl so that we can get more access down underneath. 14mm socket, remove the two nuts. And either mark or remember where the wipers go. Pull the wiper arms up. There we go, set those aside. Next, there should be some clips that hold this cowl in place. I'm missing all of mine, so there's nothing for me to remove, but take out any clips that are holding yours in place. And then these corner pieces should pop off if you just lift them at the right angle. There we go. Okay, there we go. If you flip it over, there's a washer hose that comes along here. You can simply disconnect this washer hose and set this aside. Now we have to remove the wiper transmission. I'm going to start by unplugging the wiper motor. Then there are several 10mm bolts, one over here, one over here, and there's supposed to be one over here. Looks like that one's missing. And one over here. So 4 in total. Remove the wiper transmission, set that aside. And now we have to remove this piece here. So I'll just take out all the 10mm bolts that are holding this on, including this bracket over here. I'm just going to loosen this up, spin the bracket sideways. Alright, take this out of the way. Now for this upstream O2 sensor, if you just follow the wire right over there, you can see the electrical connector. So let's disconnect that. And we'll have to unclip it off of this bracket right here. There we go. Alright, so let's put our O2 sensor socket on here. I have a 3/8 breaker bar. You can use whatever fits in here. There's not a whole lot of room. Make sure the socket is all the way down. And let's try to break this free. Oh, there we go. Now, if this doesn't break free, a lot of times it doesn't, then you'll have to heat it up or run the car, but running the car will heat up the whole exhaust system, not just the sensor. So then you run into issues with burning yourself. Obviously, that's not good. Take this out. Now over here, you'll see this 10mm bolt for the heat shield. That has to come off. Sometimes it's tough to break this free, but with a little bit of persuasion, it should come off, and hopefully it doesn't break. I'm going to spray a little bit of rust penetrant, hopefully work it into the threads here. I'm just going to work it back and forth, loosen, tighten, until I can get it out without potentially breaking it. There it is. On the other side of the manifold, there's another one of these bolts that has to come off. All right, now you can take this shield and just pull it straight up and out of the way. There it is. Next, I want to disconnect the EGR port from the manifold with a 12mm socket. I'm going to go ahead and apply a little bit of heat to this EGR port here because it doesn't really want to break free. Make sure you don't heat up the bolt, but rather the threads on the bottom on the manifold. Let's see what this did for us. Okay, well, that's fine. We can fix that because we have a new manifold, so we don't have to worry about it. At least it's off. Well, this one came out. There we go. All right, on the 12mm, let's try to undo these bottom bolts. Mine are most likely going to break, but that's fine as long as they come out. Yep. Make sure you do both of them. There's one on each side. we go. All right, so with a 12 millimeter, I'm gonna try and break this thing free. There's one mounting nut. Let's see if this bolt will come out. Okay. That's out. Now for this side. Okay, that's the third one. All right, and that's the fourth one. I know you can't see it, but neither can I. Now we can take the manifold, pull it off of the engine block, dislodge it from where it's stuck in here, and I'm going to remove this bracket once the manifold comes out. So for now, I'm just going to take the O2 sensor wire off of the bracket. Just open that bracket right up, take the wire out. Now we can remove the exhaust manifold. There it is. There's your exhaust manifold with catalytic converter assembly. Let's get a 14 millimeter socket and remove this bracket here so we can transfer it to the new one. Okay, save this. Remove the gasket. You can do this in multiple ways. You can take a wire brush to this, or you can take a razor blade and scrape everything away. I'm going to do a little bit of both until the surface is completely clean. So let's grab the new exhaust manifold. I cleaned up the bolt, and let's put this bracket back on. Try to line it up as close as possible to how it was before, and we can always adjust the angle of it after. The closer you get it now, the easier it's going to be. Snug it up. All right, so let's just fish it down in. Now I purposely chose to wait to put the gaskets on so that they don't fall. So I'm going to go ahead and put the donut gasket down on the bottom here. Okay, so there's that donut gasket. I'm going to try to slide this into the pipe. It's going to have to go over this EGR tube, and then up here we'll have to put this gasket on as well. Grab this gasket and put it on over here. There we go, that's on. Get this up closer and put the EGR gasket on. So it looks like for the most part everything is in position. I'm going to start with the two nuts up top here. I'm going to start those in quick. I'm just going to snug these up a little bit so that it can pull the manifold tight up against the engine. That way I know it's lined up with everything. All right, so that one's bottomed out. Okay, that one's bottomed out as well. Now I have to put in the two bolts. It will be easy to see. This one, not so much, but you can feel for it. All right, let's bottom these out. I want to tighten the manifold up against the engine first before I tighten anything else up, because anything else can adjust, like the EGR pipe, that can adjust a little bit. The rest of the exhaust pipe can, but not so much on the engine side. I'm only using a 1/4 inch ratchet now, but of course I'm going to switch to something bigger to actually tighten them. I'm just running them down with this because it's easier. All right, so they're all bottomed out and snug. I'm going to grab my larger ratchet and we'll tighten them all up properly. So the torque for this is 23 foot-pounds. I can't really get a torque wrench in here, but 23 foot-pounds is not a ton. If you just have a ratchet, you can basically make them tight by hand. So that's exactly what I'm going to do actually, because like I said, there's no way I can get my torque wrench in here. Really, all you're aiming to do is to squeeze down that gasket so it can compress. And you don't want to make them too tight, because you can strip the bolts out, or even worse, pull the studs out of the heads. You don't want to do that. But just make them tight. I would say once they bottom out, between a quarter and half a turn should give you what you need. Then I'm going in a cross pattern, that way I can seat the manifold and the gasket up against the head as evenly as possible. Okay, so these 4 are tight. That's perfect. Next I'm going to put the EGR bolts in. So one of my bolts broke. I'm going to reuse the one that did not break. And for the other one, I found another bolt of the same thread pattern or thread pitch. And I'm just going to use that. All right, let's snug these up. Let's put this wire back in its retainer over here. Squish that down. Now let's put in the spring bolts on the bottom. Okay, that's one. I'm going to drive it in a few threads to make sure that it's actually in. Driving this one in a little bit will actually pull the exhaust pipe up closer and will help me line up the other one. Don't go too much because then it'll put it at an angle and you can't get the other one lined up. All right, well, you can't see the other one, but I am putting in the other bolt. That one is definitely harder to see. All right, that feels pretty tight right there. Let's snug up the other one. All right, just make them tight. The springs and the donut gasket should do the job to seal everything up. Now let's get this heat shield back in. Bring it down, line it up with the exhaust manifold and the O2 sensor hole, kind of like this. And there's a bolt hole here that mounts onto the manifold, and then another bolt hole right here. You might have to wiggle it a little bit to actually get it in. And there should be a third bolt at the bottom, but mine's rotted away, so there's no attachment point for me. Let's snug these up. Okay, that one's snug. Okay, that one's snug as well. Now let's put the oxygen sensor in. Let's bottom it out completely and make sure it's snug. Okay. Has a little gasket crush washer on there, so what you're aiming for is to just squeeze that down. That way it makes a nice tight seal and doesn't get any exhaust leaks. Okay, that should be good right there. Take this wire and secure it onto its retainer here, and then of course plug it in. Make sure that clicks. At this point, it's a great idea to start up the vehicle, make sure it has no exhaust leaks, and then we can put the cowl and wiper transmission, wiper arms, and everything else back together. Now we can take this piece that goes underneath the cowl and line it up with where it needs to go. I put this bolt back in to make sure I know where it goes, so I'm going to put that in, and then just line up and start in by hand all the bolts that hold this piece on, and we'll go ahead and snug them up. I'm going to work my way from one side to the other. Let's put the wiper transmission back into place, line it up with the mounting holes. Let's put all the mounting bolts back. Snug it up. And don't forget to plug it in. Before you put the cowl on, reconnect your washer fluid hose. Make sure it's routed through this little cutout here, otherwise your wiper squirters won't work. And slide the cowl back in. Put in the little corner pieces. They kind of just snap in here. And if you had any push clips holding the cowl down, go ahead and put those on. Let's do the same to the other side. Put the wiper arms back. I'm going to start with this one on the passenger side and just line up the marks that the wipers have left, unless your windshield is perfectly clean. In that case, you should have marked it, like I said earlier, but I have witness marks from the old wiper blades, so I'm just gonna line those up and then put the 2 nuts on. And once your wipers are positioned exactly where you want them, it's important to get them right, otherwise they will either contact the cowl or the side of the windshield. Go ahead and snug these up. And don't forget to put on the little caps to hide the nuts.